John, you and I have been around this game of pro football a long time. I was just thinking, this might be the best football team I've ever seen.
This 49er team has everything, and I don't know that it isn't the best team that's ever been.
Today, the San Francisco 49ers stand alone atop the peak of the National Football League. Thanks to Joe Montana's 5-touchdown MVP performance, the team secured their 4th Super Bowl win, 55-10 over the Denver Broncos. They remain undefeated on the sport's biggest stage. Their trajectory still aimed upwards. So we ask the question, what new heights are next for these beloved Niners?
How did we get here? At one point, the San Francisco 49ers harbored the greatest dynasty the NFL had ever seen, going a perfect 4-0 in Super Bowls in the 80s with quarterback Joe Montana, and then won a 5th in the 90s with Steve Young, becoming the first team to win 5 rings. But since, their luck hasn't been the greatest, to put it kindly. My name's Caden Gier, and today we're going to be making a tier list of some of the worst moments in the decorated history of the 49ers. Before we get into it, I am not a 49ers fan, but did receive help from a friend who is on these rankings. These are all opinion-based, and if you disagree or I forgot something, let me know down below. My lists aren't perfect. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell as well if you're interested in football content. And if you drop a like, a football will appear. Let's get started.
Damn, fuck the 49ers. Yeah, fuck the 49ers. Yeah, fuck the 49ers.
We're starting off with a much lower stakes but extraordinarily frustrating game. Niners versus Broncos in 2022. Normally, I give a detailed explanation of the important events of this season leading up to the game, but we're going to go into much deeper detail on this season later on in this list. All you need to know right now is that heading into this game, 49ers 3rd overall pick quarterback Trey Lance sustained a season-ending injury in week 2, meaning their backup quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, who will also make several more appearances on this list, was slated to start. Leading into the matchup, tensions rose heavily as Russell Wilson, former starting quarterback for the Niners' most hated rival, the Seahawks, had been traded to Denver. Wilson absolutely dominated the Niners during his time with the Hawks, so this was something of a revenge game for San Francisco. Well, their revenge didn't go as planned. The 49ers took an early lead with a touchdown by the ever mentally stable Brandon Ayuk, but it was all downhill from there. This game was a masterclass of punting and very little else until the low point for the Niners came in the 3rd quarter. Up 7-3, Jimmy G pulled a Dan Orlovsky, showing very little awareness of his surroundings, and committed a safety, awarding 2 points to the Broncos on what was nearly a pick 6. Another field goal was all the Niners could muster as the Broncos took an 11-10 lead after a touchdown, and then Jimmy G threw a pick, seemingly ending the game. The 49ers actually did manage to get the ball back, but turned it back over to the Broncos immediately after a fumble, icing the game. The 49ers fell to Russell Wilson once again, losing by 1 point in a game that ended up being decided by a safety. While this wasn't necessarily a high-stakes game, many Niners fans to this day are still pressed about this one, so I wanted to include it. This game feels like a great way to start our C tier. We'll be going from the bottom of C tier all the way up to S+.
Y'all a sorry-ass team. Thanks. Fuck the 49ers. Damn. I hate the 49ers.
The Montana era for the 49ers was one of the greatest and most dominant stretches for any team in the history of the NFL. In the 1980s, they won 4 Super Bowl championships, as you could probably infer from the intro to this video, thanks to superstar talent on their roster such as Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott, Roger Craig, Charles Haley. The list just goes on and on. Their dominance was completely unmatched until a certain 6th round pick came along, but that doesn't mean Joe Montana's time with the Niners was all sunshine and rainbows. There will be 3 entries on our list from this era, the first of which being the 1983 NFC Championship. San Francisco headed to Washington to play the Skins with a Super Bowl berth on the line, but failed to score any points through the first 3 quarters of the game, while Washington went up 21-0. The 49ers surged back though, making a huge 4th quarter comeback to tie up the game after a Montana touchdown. A couple questionable pass interference calls ended up giving Washington great field position though, and they would end up kicking the game-winning field goal. Losing a championship to some very ticky-tack penalties is absolutely awful, but I do feel that this entry does belong down at the bottom of our list since it came in the midst of a run where the Niners won 4 Super Bowls, so the pain was more than made up for and hurts much less in hindsight. I also believe that since this was 42 years ago, if anyone is still caught up on this game, the pain has had plenty of time to fade away. This one will be the next entry into our C tier. In the 1999 season, the San Francisco 49ers were led by none other than their superstar scrambling lefty quarterback, Steve Young. Young was seemingly on the tail end of his career at 37 years old, but it wouldn't be ridiculous to assume he would be able to play several more years, as we've recently seen quarterbacks like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and even Phillip Rivers start games well into their 40s. We'll talk much more about the younger prime years of Steve Young's career later in this video, but for the sake of the ranking, we're actually going to start with the end for Young. In 1999, Young was fresh off of a season where he achieved personal highs in both passing yards and touchdowns. Despite exiting the playoffs early that year, don't worry, we'll talk about it later, the signs were all there that Young was still poised to play at a high level. He led the offense efficiently, and the Niners sat at 3-1 and were the favorites to win the Super Bowl. But in an otherwise unassuming game against the Cardinals, NFL history changed forever. Young had the Niners up by 17 points and was looking to add another score with just 30 seconds left in the first half. But an unblocked rusher in Aeneas Williams hit him hard, sandwiching him against another poorly blocked player in J.J. Jaquiski. What came next was an image I will never forget. Steve Young down in the dirt, completely motionless and out cold. Young didn't even move or open his eyes for 40 entire seconds. Shockingly, just about a minute later, Young was helped up and walked on his own to the sideline. Niners fans didn't know it yet, but this would be Steve Young's final ever play on a football field. It was an awful way to end a career, but given Young's age and his previously sustained 6 concussions prior to this one, his time was already coming to a close. The Niners would also go on to finish the season at 4-12 without Young. This one will cap off our C tier.
Bow, 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 bow. Y'all some booty jams. Hey, 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 hey. Y'all lost to the jam.
The 1986 season for the 49ers started nightmarishly bad. In week 1, Joe Montana suffered a back injury that was bad enough that multiple doctors suggested to him that he should retire for good. Somehow, Montana returned just 2 months later in week 10 against the St. Louis Cardinals and threw for 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. From there, the 49ers cruised to the playoffs and their first of 5 consecutive NFC West championships. They started the postseason against the Giants in New York, but the game started badly right away. On what should have been a surefire Jerry Rice touchdown, he fumbled the ball right back to the Giants, the only Jerry Rice mistake that will be featured on this list. By the end of the first half, the Niners were down 21-3 and began to drive. However, Montana was hit while throwing, and the ball went straight into the hands of Lawrence Taylor for a touchdown. The hit on Montana gave him a concussion and he was sent to the hospital. From there, the Giants just kept running up the score. San Fran was completely overwhelmed and were held to just 184 total offensive yards. While the Giants put up big play after big play, this would go down as the biggest blowout loss in Niners playoff history, and one many fans have chosen to forget to this day at 49-3. This one will start out our B tier.
Bow, 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 bow. Y'all some booty cheeks. Hey, 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 Super Bowl losing streak.
All right, here's one I was really looking forward to doing. Let me start this section by making a statement I don't believe is entirely controversial. I firmly believe that general manager Trent Baalke cost the 49ers a Super Bowl and sent them back years for more reasons than one. But one decision does stand head and shoulders above the rest: firing head coach Jim Harbaugh. For those unaware, Baalke was the general manager of the 49ers from 2011 to 2016. Multiple of those years we will be talking about later in this video. Baalke hired a coach in 2011 named Jim Harbaugh, a former NFL quarterback and, of course, Ravens legend, and college football coaching guru. Harbaugh went on to lead the Niners to a 44-19-1 record from 2011 to 2013, as well as 3 straight NFC Championship appearances and 1 Super Bowl appearance. An absolutely elite level of winning for a first-time head coach that seemed like he could be with the team for a decade or more. But just as importantly, Harbaugh brought a cultural reset to the Niners as a team. They already had some talent on the roster before he even arrived, but were completely dysfunctional and hadn't had a winning season since 2002. Harbaugh instilled an intensity and competitiveness into the entire roster that was nowhere to be found before with his us against the world sort of mentality. His rallying call of, "Who's got it better than us? Nobody!" Sorry, I needed to do that. Became iconic as well.
Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
So, knowing this information, you would surely assume Harbaugh's job would be safe for years to come, right? Well, in 2014, things got weird. There's no other word for it. Despite how much the fans, his players, and his staff loved him, strange reports began to surface seemingly out of nowhere that painted Harbaugh in a very negative light as someone who was demanding, difficult to work with, and a toxic personality. Many people to this day believe that these stories were quote-unquote leaked by Baalke and his staffers in an attempt to come up with an excuse to have Harbaugh fired. Then reports surfaced that the Niners made calls to attempt to trade Harbaugh to the Cleveland Browns in the middle of the season. It's just a move that's completely unthinkable, coming off of 3 back-to-back NFC championships. I will never be able to understand this. I'm sorry. It was clear at this point that the front office's relationship with Harbaugh was unsalvageable, as Harbaugh wanted more control of football operations, but Baalke didn't want to give up any of his power. As expected, based on the reports, the Niners announced at the end of the 2014 season that the team and Harbaugh had agreed to mutually part ways. It was not, however, mutual. That was a lie, and Harbaugh said later that he was excommunicated by Baalke and owner Jed York. Needless to say, the fallout was terrible. The backlash from fans, media, and players was insane. This decision made no sense at all. Harbaugh went on to continue his immense success as the head coach for Michigan, while Baalke whiffed on back-to-back terrible coaching hires that saw the Niners going 7-25 over the following 2 seasons. Things got so bad that fans were flying planes over the stadium asking Jed York to fire Baalke. Yikes. This will never not be the most fucking absolutely confusing firing in modern NFL history to me. And I could easily make an hour-long video on Jim Harbaugh's time with the Niners alone, maybe even longer. That being said, this incident not being related to actual on-the-field football does knock it down a few spots, so it'll go into the B tier, but just know in my heart, this is an S++++.
Yeah, hey, fuck the 49ers. Damn. I hate the 49ers. Facts. I hate that fucking team. Facts.
The next entry comes from the 2025 season, a year after an abysmal 6-11 season and 3 years into Brock Purdy's time as the 49ers starting quarterback. For those who don't know, Purdy was the final pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, making him that year's Mr. Irrelevant. Unlike other Mr. Irrelevants though, Purdy actually turned out to be fantastic, but he would end up going down with injury for a significant portion of the 2025 season. Purdy wasn't the only one though. It seemed like the 2025 49ers had a new player dropping every week. Purdy, Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, George Kittle, Michael Williams, and more. The team's playoff odds dropped exceptionally low after all the injuries, but somehow Coach Kyle Shanahan kept the team propped upright for the remainder of the season. The makeshift roster of backups and rookies managed to finish the year 12-5 and made the playoffs, heading to Philadelphia to play the reigning champion Eagles in the wild card. With Purdy and a few others back, hopes were high, but the injuries were still significant. What ensued was a huge upset in which the 49ers beat Philly 23-19. Juwan Jennings also threw a touchdown to Christian McCaffrey. Just wanted to remind you guys. Fuck the Eagles. Sorry. Next up though, the Niners faced an even scarier opponent, the Dark Side 2025 Seahawks, the best scoring defense in the entire league and the third best scoring offense. San Francisco headed to number 1 seed Seattle, and oh my God, it did not take long for things to get crazy. I'll play what happened for you.
And here we go. It's Rashid Shaheed. With the seam, Shaheed breaks through. Still going. A flag flies. Shaheed's going to take it all the way. Let's see if it stays.
First play of the game. Shaheed takes it to the house. Seahawks touchdown. According to Seattle news outlets, the crowd was so loud on that play that it registered on the Richter scale, calling back to quite easily the greatest run in NFL history many years earlier, where the same thing happened in the same stadium. I think this was one of those moments in recent playoff history that you just remember where you were when you were watching this, especially because it happened right after the end of that crazy Bills-Broncos game. From there, Seattle scored touchdown after touchdown after touchdown until the Niners were just completely dead and buried. The game ended 41-6, and the Seahawks would go on to win the Super Bowl in dominant fashion. Losing to a division rival by a blowout in the playoffs is absolutely brutal, but I need to say I don't think I can put this too high on this list, since it's something of a miracle the Niners even made it to the playoffs in the first place. So this one will go into our B tier. First of all, I realize I labeled this on the chart as 1999 because of the date of the game, even though it occurred during the 1998 season. Will I be fixing this? No. Anyways, 1998 was approaching the end of Steve Young's time in the NFL at 36 years old. Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver ever to touch a football field, had also returned from an injury he sustained the previous season and was also nearing the end of his career, or at least it seemed so at the time. Still crazy that he had a 1,000+ yard receiving season at the age of 40. That's nuts. Anyways, sorry. That would obviously not turn out to be true. Side note, Rice's name will be mentioned shockingly little for the rest of this list because he did his job exceptionally well. Truly the GOAT, just wanted to throw out some more appreciation there. I know we talked about that fumble earlier, that's about it. For this entry though, we're going to focus on a player named Garrison Hearst, an elite all-pro running back for the 49ers. In the 1998 season, Hearst was electric and the motor of a top-tier Niners offense. He started the season hot, rushing for 187 yards against the Jets in the season opener and capping his performance off with a 96-yard game-winning touchdown. He would go on to break the franchise record for scrimmage yards in a season at the time, totaling 2,105 yards and 9 touchdowns, as well as being selected as a first-team All-Pro. The 49ers finished the year 12-4, placing second in their division and heading to Green Bay in the first round of the playoffs. They had lost to the Packers for the last 3 straight years in the playoffs, so this game was personal. Losing to the same team 3 straight times in the playoffs is bad, but 4 is just unforgivable. This game was intense, and Garrison Hearst ended up running for 130 yards, completely carrying the team's offense on his back. The matchup ended up coming down to one final pass play, which I'll play for you now.
3-man rush, and Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens. Owens made the catch.
Young hit Terrell Owens for a 25-yard touchdown, a legendary play remembered as the Catch 2. With that win, the team finally exercised their Brett Favre demons and headed to Atlanta to play the Falcons in the divisional round. Well, we won't have to wait long to find our suffering moment because it happened on the first play of the game. Little bit of a trigger warning on this one. I'm about to show a very nasty injury, completely uncensored, so please look away if you don't handle that stuff well. You've been warned. On the first play of the game, Hearst takes a handoff from Steve Young, gets spun by a defender, and his ankle very clearly turns backwards. Ugh. Hearst sustained a severe fibula break and dislocated his ankle, an injury that would keep him off of the field for 2 entire years. All that hope that had been built up during the ending of the previous game for Niners faithful was suddenly shattered. And while the Niners kept the game close, they would end up losing by 2, surely able to win if Hearst was on the field. This would be the last shot the Niners would have for a playoff run in the Jerry Rice era, and a game many Niners fans would love to forget. To be honest with you all, I had an extremely hard time gauging where to put this, but I'm gonna stick it right at the top of B tier for now. I'd understand if this was near the top of your list though. Tell me what you think.
Brock Purdy look like Jimmy Neutron friend Sheen. Timu Tom Brady got your quarterback from Sheen.
All right, let's stay with our friend Steve Young for these next two back-to-back championship games that I'll just kind of merge into one entry, even though one was definitely worse than the other. Leading up to the 1992 season, the Niners made headlines for the widespread debate on whether Joe Montana or Steve Young should be the quarterback to lead the Niners in the future. This debate turned into a full-on civil war among the locker room, fans, and media. Right before the season started, the Niners also traded defensive end Charles Haley to the Cowboys for day 2 picks. I still think to this day, this is one of the dumbest trades ever made, especially given the context that you'll be given over the next few minutes. Young ended up starting the season, and he took that starting job and ran. Young would lead the NFL in passer rating in 1992 and go on to win MVP off of the back of a stellar 14-2 regular season where he commanded the league's best offense. After taking the 1 seed, the Niners started the playoffs against Washington in the divisional round, a game where Steve Young would need to prove himself as a playoff performer since he was still living in the shadow of the best playoff performer of all time at the time, Joe Montana. Young got the job done in a physical 20-13 game, and from there they would meet the Cowboys, the very same team they traded their star defensive end to earlier this season. Things started out with a huge Steve Young to Jerry Rice touchdown, but the play ended up being called back by a penalty, which, was not a great sign. The Cowboys took a lead off of a forced fumble on a punt return, then each team exchanged touchdowns to set the score at 10-7 in favor of the Cowboys. Just after half, Dallas suddenly jumped out to a 24-7 lead, and things started to look grim. A Steve Young interception definitely didn't help the Niners, and they would end up falling short 30-20. During this time, the NFC Championship was considered the, quote, real Super Bowl by fans, so losing on this stage hurt a lot. But thankfully for the Niners, they would get a chance to avenge their loss. In 1993, they would go 10-6 with Steve Young once again performing excellently, and after crushing the Giants in the divisional round, they went on to a rematch in the NFC Championship with the Cowboys. Things started with some good old-fashioned trash talking, and the first score would go to the Cowboys on an Emmitt Smith run. Then they scored again, and by the second quarter, the Niners were already playing from behind, which was a nightmare against a roster like the 90s Cowboys. By halftime, the score was 28-7. Emmitt Smith absolutely tore up the Niners defense, and while the Niners tried their hardest to make the comeback, the Cowboys just kept scoring, making defensive plays, and before long, the game came to an end at 38-21. The Niners had fallen short to the same team twice in a row, and were plagued by questions of, can Steve Young even get the job done? Well, the next year he did, which makes these games hurt a lot less in hindsight. These ones will both start out our A tier. We're gonna put the 1992 one first, and then the 1993 one right above it.
Why I hate that team so much, where can I begin? Damn, fuck George Kittle, bro, he looked like Ben Franklin.
In 1987, the 49ers had quite possibly their best team in franchise history. They were 2 Super Bowls deep into their dynasty with Montana and looking to add another ring during the strike-shortened 1987 season. In spite of the players' strike, the Niners remained on top, with Joe Montana winning NFL MVP and Jerry Rice having a record-breaking season where he recorded 22 touchdowns in just 12 games. This team looked completely unstoppable, having both the NFL's best offense and best defense by most metrics. By the time the playoffs rolled around, the Niners were 13-2, and it seemed all but inevitable that this team would be playing in the Super Bowl. When their first opponent ended up being the 8-7 Vikings, people just wrote the game in as a win. The best team in the NFL versus a team that didn't even belong at all. What actually ended up happening though was one of the biggest upsets in NFL history. All the Niners could manage in the first half of the game was a single field goal. Meanwhile, Vikings receiver Anthony Carter was absolutely dicing up the defense. It felt like every single play, Carter was taking the Vikings another 20 yards downfield. Then, right before the half, Montana was intercepted and it was taken back for a pick six to put the Vikings up 20-3 because, of course, a 17-point deficit going into the half for this team was literally unreal. But hope wasn't gone yet since they still had the comeback kid Montana on their team. In the third quarter, a pick six by the Niners defense helped even the odds a bit, but the Vikings just returned the score. Things got bad enough that Joe Montana, the NFL MVP, was benched for Steve Young. And while Young played well, it was too little too late. The Vikings defense completely contained the Niners offense, and Anthony Carter absolutely shredded the Niners defense for 220 receiving yards, at the time the all-time NFL record for a playoff game. While this upset was extremely disappointing for 49ers fans, they still had 2 more Super Bowls left to come in the Montana era, so I'll be putting this one in the A tier.
Fuck Brock Purdy, bro, he look like Ronald Reagan. Fam. Fuck Debo Samuel, bro, he look like the baby. Fam.
Sorry, I had to take a break there for a second to drink my ever-refreshing Arizona iced tea. Arizona, please sponsor me. I need money. Thank you. Anyways, for this next one, we're going to be squeezing 3 years into one entry. And since this is only the A tier, we won't be going super in-depth on detail, but let's just try to knock all 3 of these years out real quick. In 1995, the 49ers were fresh off of a Super Bowl win with Steve Young still under center, and were looking to add some more hardware to their trophy case. Jerry Rice had a historic season where he broke the single season receiving yards record, and the Niners finished 11-5, winning the NFC West. The entire team was still playing at a high level, with the defense being the best in the league. So when they matched up against the wild card Packers with Brett Favre in the '85 playoffs, the Niners weren't sweating at all, but they definitely should have been. They really should have been. A few plays into the game, the Packers defense forced a fumble and returned it for a touchdown, a sign of what was to come. By the midway point of the second quarter, the Pack was already up 21-0, and it didn't stop there. The Packers would end up forcing 4 turnovers during the game and winning 27-17. While this end was unfortunate for the 49ers, they had just won the Super Bowl, so there wasn't a lot to be upset about. But what if I told you it happened again the next year? In 1996, with mostly the same roster, the Niners went 12-4 and came in second in the NFC West, meaning they'd have to go on the road in the playoffs. They beat the Eagles 14-0 in the wild card, then headed to Lambeau for a rematch against the Packers. Once again, things started poorly as Packers returner Desmond Howard housed a punt for a touchdown. Then on the next punt, nearly did it again before another Green Bay touchdown. Soon after, Steve Young was picked off by the defense, and it was just over, like so unbelievably over. More turnovers, more falling flat, and the Niners had lost the game known as the Mud Bowl, 35-14. Well, third time's the charm, I guess. In 1997, things started out badly, with Jerry Rice and Steve Young getting injured, but the team ended up rallying for a huge 13-3 season. While the Niners had clawed their way to the NFC Championship, both Jerry Rice and Garrison Hearst had been injured before the game, so the offense wasn't anywhere near full strength. One win away from a Super Bowl appearance, but the game was straight up depressing. The Niners only managed to score a single touchdown off of a 95-yard kick return touchdown and were absolutely beaten down 23-10. For the third straight year, Favre and the Pack had ended San Francisco's season, but, well, the following year, something magical happened. The two teams faced again in the playoffs, but this time, Terrell Owens delivered that play I told you about earlier called the Catch 2. You might remember me talking about that, to beat the Packers at the absolute last second, avenging their previous seasons. Between the losses being avenged in 1998, as well as the fact that the Niners did win the Super Bowl in 1994, this could have been much worse. So I think I'll put this one at the very top of our A tier.
Bow, 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 bow. Y'all some booty cheeks. Hey, 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 hey. Y'all lost to the Chiefs.
All right, we're starting to get into really, really bad stuff. No turning back now. Let's get it. Coming fresh off of choking a 10-point lead in the NFC Championship game in 2021, the San Francisco 49ers staff believed they had reached the ceiling of quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo's potential. So they searched for the quarterback of the future in the NFL draft, sending 3 first-round picks to move up to the 3rd overall pick and draft quarterback Trey Lance. The 49ers got extremely lucky with this trade, not because they made the right choice, but because it somehow isn't remembered as one of the worst in NFL history. Spoiler alert, Trey Lance had insane upside, but turned out to be a huge bust, now sitting behind If Man as the backup quarterback of the Chargers just 4 years later. Remember Brock Purdy, that guy from earlier? Turns out he, the final pick in the entire NFL draft, was the answer. I cannot stress enough how crazy this is. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Brock Purdy is a maniac and a miracle. I love him, he's great. Anyways, after a nasty loss to the Bears, Trey Lance went down with an injury in week 2. Jimmy Garoppolo, the second quarterback on the depth chart now, took over. While the team started 3-4, Jimmy G had them sitting at 7-4 heading into week 13. The Niners also made a franchise-altering trade in October when they gave up 4 picks to acquire running back Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. With the great weapons they had on roster like CMC, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and even more, this team seemed like they had a legit chance to contend for the Super Bowl, until in week 13 when Jimmy G went down after breaking his foot against the Dolphins. Pretty much everyone assumed that the season was over, like over for the Niners until something unbelievable happened. Brock Purdy took over the offense and he looked fantastic. After each week passed and the wins stacked up, it became clear that Purdy wasn't just Mr. Irrelevant, he was their potential quarterback of the future. The Niners finished the year 13-4, then beat Seattle 41-23 in the wild card. They'd face the Cowboys in the divisional and get away with a 19-12 win, sending them to the championship. It was pretty widely believed at this point that San Fran would represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. That ship sailed very quickly though, as in the first quarter of the NFC Championship against the Eagles, Brock Purdy got hit while throwing a ball, which resulted in a really bad elbow injury. Purdy was unable to return to the game, so backup quarterback Josh Johnson went in. He played okay-ish football to just keep the Niners kind of afloat for a quarter, but he fumbled right before the half, meaning Philly got up 21-7 heading into halftime. Shortly into the third quarter, more disaster hit. Josh Johnson was hit by Ndamukong Suh and suffered a concussion, meaning that every quarterback on the Niners depth chart was now out with injury. The scene was just sad. This team that very clearly could have been playing in the Super Bowl lost all semblance of hope due to things out of their control. The Eagles would end up winning 31-7 in a game where the Niners never really stood a chance. This one will start out our S tier. And just so you know, this list's a little top heavy.
Damn, fuck the 49ers. Yeah, fuck the 49ers. Yeah, fuck the 49ers. Y'all a sorry ass team.
In the NFL, no team has ever managed to secure the elusive three-peat. Not the Patriots dynasty, the Mahomes Chiefs, the Steel Curtain, but one team came closer than any other. In 1990, the 49ers were coming off of 2 back-to-back Super Bowl championships, most recently a 55-10 blowout of the Broncos. You might remember that from the intro of this video. Critics said they couldn't keep up their historical pace for much longer, but Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and friends didn't care one bit. They steamrolled their way to a 4-0 record, and in week 6 completed an insane game against the Falcons where Joe Montana threw for 476 yards and 6 touchdowns, 5 of which were caught by Rice. They dominated the rest of the way too, as they finished with a 14-2 record, an MVP for Joe Montana, and a divisional round demolition of Washington before they hosted the New York Football Giants in the NFC Championship. This was the 49ers' chance to get revenge on the Giants for that 49-3 loss we talked about earlier. But what ensued was an absolute defensive slugfest from front to back. A hard-nosed first half ended at 6-6 after some absolutely brutal hits, but the Niners were able to score on the game's first and only touchdown shortly out of the half on a huge John Taylor catch. The Niners entered the fourth quarter up 13-9, but what happened next turned what should have been one of the greatest days in 49ers history into one that would forever live on in infamy. On an otherwise unassuming pass play, Montana exited the pocket to his left, but was hit extremely hard by Leonard Marshall from behind. Montana clearly looked out of it, and as it turned out, he would be unable to continue playing in the game. This very clearly shifted the momentum of the game in favor of the Giants. The offense tried to keep hopes alive even without Montana, but a hit on Roger Craig resulted in a fumble recovered by Lawrence Taylor. With mere seconds left on the clock, the Giants kicked the game-winning field goal, and that was that.
And the kick is good. There will be no three-peat.
Well, you're probably thinking this entry's a little too high. After all, even having the chance to compete for a three-peat is a privilege in itself. Well, it turned out the injury was far worse than expected. This would end up being Joe Montana's final ever game starting for the 49ers, sending a team that was on the cusp of making history into a period of uncertainty. This one will be our next entry into the S tier.
Fuck the 49ers. Damn, I hate the 49ers. I hate y'all. I hate the 49ers.
In 2021, the Niners were still running with Jimmy G and under the leadership of Kyle Shanahan, but were coming off of a rough 6-10 year in 2020. While they weren't as electric in 2021 as other years, there were definitely bright spots. They had 7 Pro Bowlers, which was tied for the most in the league, and finished with a solid 10-7 record, coming in third in a competitive NFC West. After 2 back-to-back close games in the wildcard and divisional, where they took down the Cowboys and the 1-seed Packers, the Niners were once again just a single win away from the Super Bowl, but there was a problem. Standing in their way were the 2021 Rams, their division rival and the team that truly went all in on winning a Super Bowl that year, which they might be doing again this year. Sure looks like it. Anyways, Matt Stafford, Jalen Ramsey, Von Miller, OBJ, and more were all acquired just that season, not to mention Aaron Donald, my GOAT, and Cooper Kupp, who were already on the roster. All that to say, beating this Rams team would be a huge ask for any team in the league. Things started out with a huge pick on Stafford in the end zone by Jimmy Ward, seemingly a good sign of what was to come for the Niners, but the Rams did end up scoring first on a Cooper Kupp touchdown catch. They quickly answered back though on a huge Deebo Samuel touchdown. Matt Gay missed a Rams field goal, wide right. Meanwhile, Robbie Gould drilled one to take the Niners up 10-7 at the half. Towards the end of the third quarter, a Kittle touchdown expanded their lead to 10 points. Watching this live was unreal. I was almost certain at this point the Rams' all-in gambit might have been for nothing, and that the Niners were Super Bowl bound, which is how I probably should have known what was going to happen next. First, an extremely weak taunting penalty gifted the Rams a first down, which was followed by another Kupp touchdown. All the Niners had to do was score 1 touchdown to put the game away, but they just couldn't get anything done. Stafford drops back, airs it out deep, and the ball lands right in the hands of Jaquiski Tartt, and
Downfield, he's picked. No, dropped. Unbelievable. A drop by Jaquiski Tartt, and he cannot believe it.
what a brutal drop. This pick would have so easily put the game away, but instead, the Rams kicked a field goal to tie it up. The Niners once again did nothing, and the Rams kicked one more field goal to go up by 3 with just a minute and a half remaining. One final chance for the Niners to take the lead, or at least try to tie it up, but man, on 3rd and 13 on their own 23, Jimmy G got taken down by Aaron Donald. He desperately tried to throw it away, and the pass was picked. That was it. The Niners fell short once again, while their division rival would go on to win the Super Bowl. This was such a winnable game, which makes this our next entry into the S tier quite easily.
Bow, 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 bow. Y'all some booty champs. Hey, 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 hey. Y'all lost to the champ.
We're staying in the Jimmy G era for this next one, but backtracking a couple years to 2019, a year where the Niners made one of the most impressive single-season turnarounds in NFL history. After an injury-plagued 2018 season where the team went 4-12, they would come back in 2019 and go 13-3. The 49ers drafted world-famous human rights activist Nick Bosa second overall, which ended up being the biggest contributor to their success that year. With a front four including Bosa, D. Ford, Eric Armstead, and DeForest Buckner, they went from one of the worst defenses the previous year to top 5 in almost every defensive metric. That defense, as well as an offense that finally started clicking with Jimmy G, helped the Niners start 8-0 and finish with a 13-3 record as well as the NFC's #1 seed. San Fran dominated their way through the playoffs, blowing out the Vikings and definitively beating the Packers in a game where Raheem Mostert ran for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now it was time. Back to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 54, 49ers versus Chiefs. Two teams both on the rise in their own completely different ways. Things began with a Niners field goal, then a Chiefs 4th down conversion and Mahomes rushing touchdown. On the following drive, Jimmy G threw an absolute duck to the Kansas City defense before the Chiefs would kick a field goal, taking the score to 10-3. Kyle Juszczyk scored a touchdown to tie things up shortly after, though, making the game a tie at halftime. Once more, the Niners kicked a field goal before Nick Bosa forced a fumble on Mahomes. Then, on the next play, he was picked off by Fred Warner, which turned into yet another Niners score, setting the lead at 20-10 heading into the 4th quarter. Immediately after, Mahomes was picked off again. The Niners would end up giving the ball back, and what came next was the game changer. Until this point in the game, the Niners definitively looked like the much better team and as if they were very firmly in command, but as is true with all the most painful games ever, the 4th quarter is really where it gets interesting. Mahomes hit Tyreek on a huge play, swinging the momentum in favor of KC. Then a nasty pass interference gave the Chiefs even better position to score, and they quickly did on a Travis Kelce touchdown. After the Niners once more failed to get anything done on offense, all of Niners faithful began to feel it in their hearts. Their team was up by 3 still, but they had seen this so many times before that they all felt it coming. Bam! Huge catch by Sammy Watkins, then another touchdown to put Kansas City up 24-20. With just 2.5 minutes left on the clock, it was now or never for Jimmy G and the crew. Could this system quarterback really step up to deliver during the biggest moment of the Super Bowl? Spoiler alert, nope. Garoppolo overthrew Emmanuel Sanders on a surefire touchdown and then was sacked on 4th down. And that was it. KC scored once more, Jimmy G was picked, and the 49ers lost their 2nd Super Bowl in franchise history. Another one for our S tier.
Bow, 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 bow. Y'all some booty cheeks. Hey, 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 Super Bowl losing streak.
Well, here we are 4 years later, and once again, the Niners will face the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But before that, the team was fresh off of that agonizing NFC Championship defeat against the Eagles that we discussed earlier, and were out for blood. It was no secret that San Francisco had the best roster in the NFL coming into this year, and since Brock Purdy had stepped up the year before, they now had an unproven but seemingly solid quarterback. While they started a solid 5-3, they would turn things around and finish the year 12-5, securing the NFC's #1 seed once again. Christian McCaffrey won Offensive Player of the Year after leading the league in scrimmage yards for an all-time great season, and Purdy finished as a finalist for the MVP award. Everything for the 49ers was clicking on all fronts, but somehow they barely squeezed by the 7-seed Packers in the divisional. Then, Lions fans, please do me a favor, cover your ears. I'm sorry. Then the Lions were up 24-7 on the Niners in the NFC Championship, before San Francisco made an absolutely unreal comeback to make the Super Bowl versus the Chiefs, but things didn't start well. First drive, McCaffrey fumbles the ball, Chiefs recover. After several defensive stops though, the Niners would score first on a Super Bowl record Jake Moody field goal from 55 yards. They also ended up scoring a touchdown on a trick play to McCaffrey to take a 10-0 lead. Editor Caden Gier here. I don't know how I forgot to mention this because I literally used it as the picture for the game, but in the second quarter, Dre Greenlaw got injured running onto the field. I believe he tore his Achilles, and I also believe that this severely impacted the outcome of the game. Greenlaw was playing amazingly, and this very well sums up the 49ers' luck in recent years. The only Chiefs score in the first half would be a field goal with seconds remaining, and coming out into the third quarter, Mahomes was quickly picked off by the 49ers defense, but the Chiefs got it back for another field goal. On the kickoff, sorry, Niners fans, sensitive topic, I know, the return was muffed, and Kansas City recovered inside the 20, before quickly scoring a touchdown for a 3-point lead. Purdy then answered with his own touchdown to Jawan Jennings, but the extra point was blocked. Remember this play, it was very important. Each team had exchanged field goals, with the Niners up 19-16 and under 2 minutes left to play. Mahomes meticulously drove the team into field goal range, and lover of women Harrison sent it to overtime. Here's where things get interesting. Upon winning the coin toss, the Niners elected to receive the ball. Here's the problem. The Niners players and coaching staff seemed to be unaware that the NFL had changed the overtime rules in the postseason so that each team would get at least one possession, meaning kicking to the other team is the more favorable option since you know what you need to do to win. They seemed to be under the impression that the sudden death overtime rules were still in effect, which was completely false and an absolutely idiotic mistake by the Niners coaches. On their only OT possession, San Francisco could only muster a single field goal, and the Chiefs went the length of the field for a game-winning Mecole Hardman touchdown. This was the Niners' chance at redemption. A rematch against the team that had last defeated them in the Super Bowl, a game that went to overtime and they still couldn't get the job done. This will be our final entry into the S tier.
Yeah, hey, fuck the 49ers. Damn. I hate the 49ers. Fact. I hate that fucking team. Fact.
Welcome to the S+ tier. After careful discussion with the aforementioned Niners fan friend who helped me make this ranking, we came to the conclusion that, like the Buffalo Bills tier list, which you should go watch right now, by the way, the Niners also have 3 S+ worthy games, and well, they're in 3 back-to-back years, 2011, 2012, and 2013. For the sake of continuity, since these games were all a part of the same era, I'll give you guys some short background. I would also like to mention real quick, I do think all 3 of these entries are interchangeable, so if you think one is worse than another, I don't blame you. Anyways, in 2011, the 49ers hired Jim Harbaugh. If you've been watching this video, then you know a good bit about Jim Harbaugh from my section about him earlier, which I will put the timestamp for on screen in case you weren't paying attention or skipped over it. We'll be rehashing some of that, but there is still a lot of valuable information to be had there. Skipping over the Harbaugh stuff, this era of the Niners had some very important players to know, so let's speedrun this. First, Patrick Willis. Willis is an NFL Hall of Famer and one of the greatest linebackers in league history. He was the face of the Niners defense for 8 years. Then Navorro Bowman, a 4-time All-Pro linebacker who commanded the defense alongside Willis. On the other side of the ball, Frank Gore had one of the longest careers for any running back ever and was consistently pretty great. Vernon Davis was an elite blocker and deep ball threat at tight end, and Michael Crabtree was the favorite target of quarterback Colin Kaepernick. Speaking of Kaepernick, Cap was a promising young dual threat quarterback who took over for previous quarterback Alex Smith, who was traded to the Chiefs. With that out of the way, the first of these entries we'll be talking about is the 2013 NFC Championship game. Coming off of a Super Bowl appearance and during their final season in the legendary Candlestick Park, the 49ers were led by the aforementioned Colin Kaepernick. It was Cap's first full year as a full-time starter, and he delivered, scoring 25 total touchdowns and assisting the Niners to a 12-4 record. The real star of the show, though, was the defense. They were top 3 to 5 in almost every major metric and absolutely dominated the league. Not only was this defense amazing, but they delivered some extremely memorable plays. One of these plays sticks out above the rest though, coming in the final ever game at historic Candlestick Park. As a small little oasis of joy to reward 49ers fans for sitting through all this misery, I'll play it for you.
Here they come. Pressure coming, Ryan gets rid of it for Douglas, it's fought for, and it's in the hands of Bowman, who's got all green grass. Navorro Bowman.
gonna take the Niners to the playoffs.
This play would go down as the pick at the stick, with this interception securing a victory for the Niners. It really did seem like Candlestick had a little bit of magic left in the dirt, and this will forever be one of my favorite plays in NFL history due to the context surrounding it. However, even the amazing play on both sides of the ball wasn't enough to secure the NFC West for the 49ers, because the team that did take the NFC West title in 2013 was one that would achieve immortality. The Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom. Richard Sherman, Bobby Wagner, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, and those are just the highlights of the Seahawks defensive roster. This Seahawks defense was, I'd argue, top 5 of all time, and not to mention they had stars like Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch on the other side of the ball. The Hawks secured the #1 seed in the NFC, meaning that San Francisco would be the 5 seed and have to play all their playoff games on the road. The Niners were ready for the moment though. First, they beat the Packers at Lambeau with a walk-off field goal, then held the Panthers to just 10 points in a win in the divisional round. The Niners were once again just one game from a Super Bowl, but the football gods could not let them get there so easily, because the Legion of Boom awaited them in the championship, and my God, what a game this was. One of my favorites ever, period. First play of the game, Aldon Smith forces a fumble on Russell Wilson and the 49ers recover. What a tone setter. The Niners went up by 3 shortly after, and a few drives later, Colin Kaepernick ripped off a 58-yard run, the longest by any quarterback in a playoff game ever, and they scored shortly after. But on the touchdown run, guard Mike Iupati went down with an injury, which severely impacted the 49ers run game, as Iupati was one of the best run blockers in the entire NFL. The Seahawks would kick a field goal, and the game went into half at 10-3. A huge beast mode run in the third would tie the game up. There was a play soon after where a fumble was forced on Kaepernick, but the Niners luckily managed to recover, and on the next play, Cap threw a jump ball touchdown to Ravens legend Anquan Boldin. There was a huge Doug Baldwin return and another Hawks field goal, and an incorrect call on a roughing the kicker that should have easily given the Niners a first down. Then 4th and 7 for the Hawks turned into a Jermaine Kearse touchdown, giving them their first lead of the game, before they forced another touchdown on Kaepernick. And on 3rd and goal for the Niners defense, the moment came. On a short throw to Jermaine Kearse, Navorro Bowman very clearly forced and recovered a fumble. You'd think they'd give this ball to the Niners then, right? Nope. They called Kearse down, and for some reason, the refs decided this play wasn't reviewable, and that was that. But even worse, not only did the refs screw the Niners, but on that play, Bowman suffered a horrific leg injury that would knock him out for the entire next season. Easily one of the worst plays in 49ers history. While they did get the ball back, Cap had another turnover, and Seattle went up by 6, meaning the 49ers had just under 3 minutes to score a touchdown. Well, on 1st and 10, deep in Seahawks territory, Cap launched a ball to Michael Crabtree in what would become one of the most iconic NFL moments ever. For the Seahawks, of course.
Kaepernick, end zone, Crabtree, broken up, picked off! This game is over! Knocked in the air, intercepted by Smith, off the hands of Richard Sherman.
Richard Sherman tipped the ball on a play so good, it literally became known as the tip. And that was the game. Wow, what a game, but what an agonizing defeat for San Francisco. Division rival, championship, bad ref calls, losing Bowman, so many turnovers, that tipped pass, and not to mention Sherman's post-game speech, which I'll play for you now.
Thank you so much. Richard, let me ask you the final play. Take me through it.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're going to get. Don't you ever talk about me.
Who was talking about you?
Crabtree, don't you open your mouth about the best. Or I'm going to shut it for you real quick. LOB.
This is so easily our first entry into the S+ tier, a game that Niners faithful will truly never recover from. The only reason it isn't higher is because this Seahawks team was simply one of the best of all time. Losing to them was forgivable.
Brock Purdy looked like Jimmy Neutron friend Sheen. Timu Tom Brady got your quarterback from Sheen.
Can it really even get worse than that last game? My God. Well, I'd argue it could. Let's go 2 years back to 2011, the Niners' first year under Harbaugh and still rolling with Alex Smith under center. Before 2011, they hadn't had a winning season in 9 years, but something was different with Harbaugh in the building. We talked about how the culture changed when he came to the team earlier, and it was manifesting into real results. The defense suddenly clicked under Vic Fangio and became undeniably elite, while Harbaugh helped revive Alex Smith and the offense. All this change resulted in the Niners going from 6-10 the year prior to 13-3, winning the NFC West. For the first time in a decade, Candlestick Park truly felt alive. The fans finally believed in the Niners once again, and the energy compared to previous years was night and day. And man, it would only get higher in the divisional round. The 49ers played the Drew Brees-led Saints at Candlestick, and what came was one of the greatest playoff games ever. I won't go into too much detail since this isn't the game we're covering, but a quick overview. Huge plays, multiple lead changes in the fourth quarter, and a legendary Vernon Davis catch securing the win for the Niners as he ran crying into Jim Harbaugh's arms. What a scene, what an environment, what a game, what a team. Please go watch the highlights if you don't remember this one. You probably forgot about it. Momentum was at an all-time high for San Francisco. They seemed completely unstoppable, and in even better news, they would be hosting the 9-7 completely underwhelming Eli Manning New York Giants. The Giants had somehow made their way to the championship, but were the 25th ranked defense and 11th ranked offense in 2011. So needless to say, the Niners were not intimidated by the Giants, especially considering they had just beaten them months before. January 22nd, 2012 was a day that would change the course of not just 49ers history, but NFL history as a whole. It was cold and rainy at Candlestick, a scene that felt absolutely perfect for what was to come. The Niners defense started off by pressuring the ever-loving hell out of Eli Manning over and over before Alex Smith hit Vernon Davis deep for a huge first quarter touchdown. The Giants gave the ball back again, but on an attempted trick play, Kyle Williams fumbled the ball. Wait, hold on, pause. Who the hell is Kyle Williams? Well, Williams was a 6th round pick by the Niners in 2010 and had never really been in a starting role of any kind before. But with Ted Ginn Jr. getting injured before this game, Williams was thrust into being the starting punt returner as well as the 3rd string receiver. Okay, unpause. Anyways, yeah, he fumbled, but he did get it back. Eli Manning hit the ever underrated Victor Cruz for a big gain to start the second quarter, then threw a touchdown to Giants legend Bear Pasco. The Giants would take a field goal lead at the half of a defensive slugfest of a game. Their first offensive action of the second half was when Alex Smith hit Vernon Davis for another long touchdown, and then the fourth quarter rolled around. This is where things got crazy. Giants punt to the Niners, Kyle Williams is back to receive. Not only does he not catch the punt, but it grazes off his knee, meaning it's Giants' ball. Wow, okay. The Giants immediately capitalized with a touchdown, and then after a 49ers field goal, the game was tied. A few possessions of hard hits, and the game went into overtime at 17-17. But not before Navorro Bowman was screwed out of a forced fumble by the refs. Where have I seen that one before? Anyways, after a couple more drives in overtime ended by pass rushers, the Giants punted to Kyle Williams. Again, lightning doesn't strike twice though, does it? Actually, not only does it strike twice, it strikes worse. Williams caught the ball and immediately fumbled it back to the Giants, gifting them the game-winning field goal on a silver platter. Holy shit. What a terribly unlucky game for the Niners. I understand why this one haunts fans to this day, but I also can't help but feel for Kyle Williams. He was thrust into a starting role unprepared, and this performance ultimately cost his career. This one's going comfortably in S+. Wow, we've only got one entry left. We've covered countless championship games, 2 Super Bowls, and some straight up unfortunate incidents. The top of this ranking was so hard to make, but after careful deliberation with the Niners fan council, one game rose to the top: Super Bowl 47.
Why I hate that team so much, where can I begin? Man, fuck George Kittle, bro, he looked like Ben Franklin.
There is no doubt in my mind that 2012 was the absolute peak of the Harbaugh era 49ers. Their record wasn't the best they'd had under Harbaugh, but don't get it twisted. This team was insanely good. Early in the season, Alex Smith was playing some of the best football of his career, and the offense was great. Then on the defensive side of the ball, the Niners were once again one of the absolute best defenses in the league. Willis and Bowman were completely unreal playing next to each other. It honestly and truly seemed this would be the year for the Niners, with many even believing they had a chance to become the NFL's next dynasty. But there was a problem. In Week 10, quarterback Alex Smith suffered a concussion during a game against the Rams, meaning that backup quarterback Colin Kaepernick would have to start several games. Cap had only completed 3 passes up until this point in his career, so it wasn't too unbelievable when people started taking the Niners out of the running for the championship after the Smith injury. But come on, you already know what's gonna happen since we talked about 2013. Cap exploded onto the scene in 2012. Highlight play after highlight play, he ran read options like few other quarterbacks ever had before. He was so good that once Alex Smith had recovered, the Niners still let Kaepernick start. Nobody knew how to defend him that year, and he almost seemed like a cheat code. The Niners would finish the year 11-4-1 and claim the NFC West crown. The momentum was so high, but what awaited the Niners in the playoffs would not be so easy to get through, especially for first-year starter Kaepernick. They faced the Packers, and Cap put out an absolute masterclass of a dual threat game. 263 passing yards, 181 rushing yards, and 4 total touchdowns to knock Aaron Rodgers and the Pack out of the playoffs. Then they faced the 1-seed Falcons in Atlanta and made an unreal comeback from down 17-0. They ended up winning 28-24, and just like that, for the first time in almost 2 decades, the Niners were back in the Super Bowl. Awaiting them on the other side was one of the most unique matchups they could have possibly gotten. The 2012 Baltimore Ravens were one of the weakest teams that Baltimore had harbored in years. They barely made the playoffs in the first place. Superstar players like Ed Reed and Ray Lewis were no longer in their prime, their offense was mediocre, and their defense was below average. This team made it to the big game against the Niners by sheer force of willpower, and I will be making a full video on them eventually. Not to mention, John Harbaugh, Coach Jim's brother, was the coach of the Ravens, meaning these 2 brothers would coach against each other in the big game in the New Orleans Superdome. Things began not so great for the 49ers as the Ravens scored a touchdown to Anquan Boldin on their first drive. The Niners then kicked a field goal, and on their following possession, the Ravens forced a fumble and quickly capitalized with another touchdown. The Niners had a chance to turn the tides, but Kaepernick was picked off by Ed Reed. Nothing ended up coming of it though, as the Ravens attempted a fake field goal, but Patrick Willis blew up the attempt. That didn't deter the Ravens though, as on their next drive, Jacoby Jones scored a 58-yard touchdown. Things just looked awful for the Niners. They were getting beaten to a pulp. Thankfully, they were able to kick a field goal to set the score at 21-6 going into the second half. A new half is a great time to regroup, but oh man, the Niners got no time at all. Opening kickoff of the second half, this happens.
So this could be a run back from 9 deep for Jacoby Jones, and look at him go. Jones is past the 50, and he is flying inside the 20, and a kickoff return, 109 yards and a touchdown, an all-time record.
At this point, almost all hope was lost. The momentum was just so intensely in the Ravens' favor. But then something strange happened. After a sack on Colin Kaepernick, the lights just went out. This has literally never happened before or since in the history of the Super Bowl. Half of the Superdome was pitch black and the lights went down. Everyone wondered when this technical difficulty would end, and it would turn out to take 35 entire minutes to get the lights back on. If you were watching this game, this is one of those moments you just never forget. Mention this Super Bowl to anyone and they'll say, oh yeah, the blackout Super Bowl. This 35-minute break to regroup, discuss strategy, and shift the game plan was huge for the 49ers, and it showed. They quickly came out and scored on a Michael Crabtree touchdown, and suddenly the Ravens' lead wasn't so impossible to overcome anymore. In an instant, it seemed like the Niners were back in the end zone again with a Frank Gore run. The defense forced a fumble, and immediately they kicked a field goal to shorten the Ravens' lead. One Kaepernick rushing touchdown later, this was a 2-point game, but soon became a 5-point game after a Ravens field goal, 34-29. The Niners have one drive to complete, to this point, the largest comeback in Super Bowl history. A huge Gore run set the Niners up inside the 5, but the Ravens stood strong. A couple plays later, it was 4th down with the Super Bowl on the line. One play to change the course of 49ers history, and well, it was incomplete. Just like that, it was over. The Niners rallied so hard and nearly made an all-time great Super Bowl comeback against all odds, just to be held out of the end zone when all they had to do was get 5 yards in 4 plays. It was unbelievable. Not to mention, many Niners fans think Ravens cornerback Jimmy Smith held Michael Crabtree on that final play. While I can understand that view, there was mutual contact, and it would have been a soft call with the Super Bowl on the line, and the ball almost certainly would have been out of Crabtree's reach anyways, due to Kaepernick rushing the throw since he was under pressure. But I'm also a Ravens fan. This was one of the best days of my life, so maybe I was biased. Who knows? Tell me what you think down below. Should it have been called PI? Or on the other side, do you think the conspiracy theory that the NFL turned the lights out to either make the game more competitive or rig it in favor of the 49ers is true? Anyways, the combination of this being the 49ers' first ever Super Bowl loss, them nearly completing the comeback, the controversy, the context of the Harbaugh era in San Francisco, and the fact that the Niners have still failed to get it done since, all combined to make this an extremely compelling case to top off our S+ tier and finish our list. Thank you so much for watching. This video was so hard to rank because of how many incidents the Niners have and how subjective the misery of each one is. If you've seen my other videos, you know how much time and effort these take, so please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and turning on notifications to get updates for my future uploads. I am a small content creator who works full-time, and this is only my 4th video, so literally everything helps. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, consider checking out my other suffering tier lists for the Bills and Ravens. And don't worry, more teams as well as some non-tier list videos will be coming soon. Thanks for watching, and peace.